Please join me in welcoming the writer, director, and star of A Tale of Love and Darkness, Natalie Portman. So congratulations on this incredible film. It's obviously based on the memoir by the acclaimed writer Amos Oz, and I'm wondering if you can tell us about the decision to choose this book for your first directorial feature.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for being here. It means so much to me to have such an incredible audience on our opening night in New York. The book I read when it first came out in translation almost 10 years ago, and immediately I could visualize it as a film, and that was my first experience really seeing an entire feature-length film in front of my eyes in my imagination. I think that speaks a lot to the quality of the writing, but also this real story, emotional story between a mother and son that moved me incredibly, and also a period of time that I was really interested in, a place that I've been imagining my entire life because of stories I've heard from my parents and grandparents about coming to what was then British Palestine, and then of course the creation of the state from Eastern Europe.
And I'm wondering, did you approach Amos Oz in the early stages of imagining the film? Did you get his permission to kind of tell his life story on the screen?
Yeah, so the first step was, of course, approaching Oz, and which was really daunting because I'm a great admirer. He's, as many of you know, one of the great writers of our time, and certainly of Israel, and also a great leader of the peace movement, which he's kept quite separate, his political and his artistic careers. And so I had the great opportunity to meet him and ask him permission to make a film of his book, which he generously granted for I'm not sure what reason. And then he continued to really help the film. He shared photo albums with me of his family. He took me on a tour of his old neighborhood when we were location scouting to show me. His old neighborhood has now become very, very religious, so you can't film there. But he showed me other streets that he suggested would look like the streets that he grew up on that hadn't changed that much from the 40s.
And I'm curious, did he see the film yet? And if he has, do you know what he thinks of it?
Yes, we showed him the film, and it was a great relief to me, especially as someone who admires him so much, that he really loved it and really has been very supportive of the film. He said to me, this is difficult for me, obviously. It's my story, and it's my mother, it's my name, it's my writing. It's not easy for me to watch, but he was very very appreciative of it, thankfully, as I of course wanted to do him justice.
I'm so impressed with the cast you assembled for this film, and being a fan of Israeli music, a big fan of Gilad Khurana. I'm just wondering if you can talk about how you found your cast, especially finding such an amazing, talented young actor to play young Amos.
Yeah, so the actor who plays Aryeh in the film, it was actually his first film. He's a relatively well-known musician, sort of indie rock musician, in a band called the Giraffes. And this was his first movie, and our casting director sort of had a stroke of genius suggesting him because he looks very different. Like, he comes in when we met him the first time with like a mohawk and chains and like a leather jacket. And he's not exactly this like nebbishy guy, but he has this incredible obsession with language and love of words, and he writes himself. He's a poet, and of course writes his lyrics and his music as well, and just he added a lot too. I mean, some of the lines he said, the etymological sort of lines were his own that he added. The one about the flower, where the flower comes from bull and scent together. He added that, and he just brought so much to the film. And then Amir Tesler, the child, I think I met every 6 to 16-year-old Ashkenazi boy in Israel for this film, and it was just really hard. Amos Oz is a great mind and a great heart, and to find what that is at age 8 is, was at one point seemingly impossible. And then this child walked in who was so small and so brilliant, and every time I almost always used his first take because his instincts were so good. And he did all these political impressions in his audition. And I was like, oh, you're really into politics. And he's like, well, not really between parties, more like within the party. And I was like, who are you? Amazing child.
Circling back to what you said about Gilad and his interest in language, it's obviously a big risk to make a film in Hebrew. Why was it that you felt it was important to make this in the original language of the book?
Well, I think that you lose a lot of authenticity if you don't use the language of the place, and of course Hebrew is the language that is spoken in Israel. And secondly, Hebrew is almost a character in the story. I recognize my mom's cough. So Hebrew, at this moment, it's a really unique story in history. It was a dead language. Many of you know this, so excuse me for saying it if you know it already, but not a dead language, but it was only spoken for religious purposes. And then all of these refugees from dozens of different countries come not speaking it and decide, okay, tomorrow we're all going to speak Hebrew on the street and use a biblical language, much like we know like Latin today, to say, hey, I'm going to go fill up my car with gas. So it had to be modernized very quickly, and it's an exciting time to be a writer too, because as you create your stories, you can also create the language.
Obviously, you yourself were a child actor. Do you feel like that experience gave you insight into how to work with Amir and elicit such an amazing performance from him?
Well, I can only give him credit for the performance because he's really just an amazing instinct. He has amazing instincts. But I think the thing I most learned as a child actor that I wanted to create for him was that when I was a kid, everyone at work made it seem like play to me, not like a job. And I wanted him to feel that way because kids obviously should not be working. And so, but also acting is kind of a, paid form of being a child. You could like pretend and wear costumes and, talk in funny voices. And so I think it can be really joyful if you create a nice environment. So tried to make sure there wasn't any screaming going on set, or sometimes when things get stressful, people can start raising voices, and then between takes we were always kind of joking around and making it fun.
Throughout your career, you've worked with some of the most acclaimed and accomplished directors working today. Did any of them give you any advice, and if so, can you share any of that?
Well, I was really lucky to have gotten to work with so many people I admire before getting to step foot onto set as a director, which I can only imagine that it would be really, really, it's scary as is on your first set, even when you've been on a lot of sets before as an actor. But if you step on as a director and have never been on a film set for its duration, I think it must be really, really scary. And it was really helpful. I think no one really offered me advice like in any sort of trying to like teach me way, but just observing people, I definitely picked things up that I wanted to use and tried to use. And I got to see the way Darren Aronofsky would like tailor his direction to each actor, that everyone needed something really different, and figuring out what people respond to best. And Mike Nichols was always emphasizing story. Every moment he would make us name the moments, like this is the moment they're falling in love. This is the moment they realize, she realizes he's cheating, that you remind yourself what story you're telling, you're all on the same page. And Anthony Minghella would sometimes like have actors change lines on each other. So when I was doing Cold Mountain, I had a scene with Jude Law, and I have a baby that's sick, and he had Jude when the camera was off of Jude. Jude said to me, "Is your baby dying?" And of course that line will never be in the film, but it provoked a reaction in me that was different than every previous take. So I would do that with my actors sometimes, like Amir, when he has to run out to go see the garden. It was hard to get that sort of spontaneous excitement, and so one take I had Gilad say to him, "There's an ice cream truck outside," you know, and you get that kind of response. So you do pick things up all the time.
And while we're talking about the amazing performances in the film, your own is so touching and so heartfelt, and I'm wondering for you, was it always your plan to play Fanya in the film?
It was not my plan. When I first started thinking about making the film, I was 26 or 27, and so it wasn't even really a good idea, because I mean, to be a mother of a 12-year-old, it wasn't right casting. But I really wanted also to just focus on directing, and was really hoping to hire an Israeli actress. And I started going out to financiers to raise money to make the film, and people kept saying to me, like, people kept saying no. They were like, it's your first movie, it's obviously a difficult topic, you make it in Hebrew, you hire actors that no one knows, we're not giving you money. And it took a while, and then over time, it took long enough that I got old enough to play the part. And people were like, if you're in it, we'll let you make it, we'll give you money to make it. And so I accepted it. Not accepted it, I accepted my own offer. Yeah. No, but I mentally accepted the concept of both directing and acting, which ended up being really wonderful, I think, for me, both as an actor, because I had to be kinder to myself, because usually it's really hard for me to watch myself, and as a director you have to watch yourself over and over and over again. And so instead of being allowed to just go, oh, I can't, I had to watch it and be constructively critical, and and accept that sometimes it was okay, sometimes it was good. And as a director, it was cool because you can direct from within a scene. You can, change your performance and change the actors opposite you, their performances. If you're a little tougher, a little more withdrawn, their acting changes. So it was an interesting kind of tool as a director.
We have time for a very few number of questions from the audience. I'll just call on someone and I'll repeat the question into the mic.
Hi, I'm an NYU film student, aspiring director. But did you have an issue with, how did you transform your role as a director and an actress, especially interacting with your other actors in the scene? Like, how did you change the way you would speak to them once you were going to direct them, or once you were speaking to them as an actor to an actor?
I'll just repeat the question. The woman asking the question is herself a film student, aspiring director, and she's wondering how Natalie was able to go from being the director of a scene to a scene partner with her fellow actors in a scene.
Yeah, it's a great question, because it is, when you're just acting, you can really kind of lose yourself in the role and not, just kind of like, of course, some people just stay in character all the time, and of course, as director, you can't. You're going back and forth. So, it technically, logistically, I would do the scene, go back, watch it on the monitor, and then come back, give notes if I needed to, and then we do it again. That was if I was in the scene, because of course there were scenes that I wasn't in that I would just watch on the monitor. Also, if it wasn't a take that I was in, I wouldn't run back and watch it, because I could often judge performance by being in the scene and what I wanted changed. I also was lucky enough to have a great DP, a great first AD, first assistant director, cinematographer, and producers who were kind of like second, third, fourth pair of eyes on the monitors. So they would watch out for things like camera shake or focus issues or an extra in the background looking directly into camera, so that there were fewer things that I needed to be focused on, that I could kind of focus on performance. And then in terms of talking to the actors, I feel like I talk to the actors as a director in the way that you normally would, and then of course, I would never say action because I was in the scenes, my first assistant director, so as soon as it's action, you're in the scene. So it requires a little, you know, flexibility of moving back and forth, but it was doable.
While we're on the subject of your DP, can you just talk a little bit about him? Because of course he is such a legend in his field. So I'd love if you talk about the choice and how you started working with him.
Yes, the DP of the film is named Slavomir Iziak, and he is Polish. He made several of Kieslowski's films, including Blue, Double A for Veronique, a short film about killing, which are also some of my favorite movies, and also has made big American movies like Black Hawk Down and one of the Harry Potters. You know, he's done kind of both sides of the spectrum, and he was really, it was kind of crazy that I reached out to him because he's one of my favorites, if not my favorite, and shockingly he was interested, which was incredible, and he was a real guide and mentor throughout the process. So he was a very, very special part of it.
Yes, right now, lady in the row.
Hi. Oh, thank you. Congratulations, Natalie, for a brilliant movie. It's very heartwarming. It seemed like you surrounded yourself with a great army that served your movie fabulously well. I didn't know you were the screenplay writer as well, so it's incredible. But it seemed like Mother Nature also helped you, because I noticed an extraordinary scene by the river. And it was so chilling because it was telling your story as well.
Yeah, that's a very good, well, I can paraphrase. You noticed something very, very good eye, that the river overflowing in the movie, which is actually kind of an interesting story. So before we started filming, there was this crazy storm in Israel, which never happens. I mean, it's the desert there, and it was pouring, and it even ended up snowing at one point, which really never happens. And in the book, the time that part at the end is part of the book, that when his mother died, there was this great storm and the river overflowed, and it was this very unusual moment. And so I ran out and I said, we have to shoot this. We have to get out there and shoot this. My DP wasn't even in town yet. He was still in Poland. He hadn't come. And this is my very amateur director story. So I got my team of, my very generous, cooperative team of my camera operator and focus puller and my assistant director. There were about 5 of us. And we went out in like full rain gear and rain pants and things. No one was outside. I mean, it was literally everyone was just staying inside. And went out and to film this like flooding rain. And then we went back and looked at the footage, and you could not see it because rain needs to be lit. Like, you can't just shoot rain and see it. Like, it needs to be lit from behind. And if my DP had been there, he would have said that and would have known that, because when we did shoot the rain, which was, you know, created rain, he lit it. So literally, you could see it like hitting the water was sort of the only thing. But the amazing shot that I was able to salvage was the river overflowing, which is, you know, once in a lifetime kind of sight in Israel. So you noticed the shot that was salvaged from a disaster shoot where I risked my crew's life from my stupidity.
I think that's all we have time for. I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming out, and thank you so much, Natalie.